All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Volker Gebhardt. I'm the Director of Academic Program for Mathematics and Statistics at Western Sydney University. And I would like to give you a little bit of a feeling what mathematics is, why it is important for your career, and how you can use it to multiply your career opportunities. I will also, towards the end, give you a little bit of a rundown on possible careers and possible degree options at Western Sydney University in mathematics. So firstly, um, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional inhabitants and custodians of the lands on which we are. Um, Basically, what I would like to talk about are 3 points. So firstly, as I said, what mathematics is and why it's important. Secondly, which might interest some of you, I would like to give you some advice on choosing your HSC subjects, because I know from firsthand that sometimes advice that you may receive from other sources is not the best advice. And finally, last but not least, I want to mention a few careers and degree options in mathematics. So firstly, what is mathematics and why is it important? Often I hear when I say I'm a mathematician, the response is, oh, so you're coming up with fancy new formulas or way of computing something. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. To me, the essence of mathematics is to use abstraction and logic to understand patterns, to discover, describe, and understand patterns. So it's not about formulas at all. At the end of the day, you might use a formula to describe a pattern that you found, but really it's the abstraction and the logic and the pattern recognition, the modeling, that is the essence. So this ability can be used in many fields. It can be applied to phenomena in many fields, and there's too many fields to list them. But I just want to mention some of them. There's obviously all branches of science. There's engineering, economics, finance, medicine, but also politics, for instance. Now, you don't have to take my words for it. So I'm referring to Eddie Wu, Australian local hero in 2018. He said, mathematics heightens our engagement with the world, allowing us to perceive it as it truly is. Without mathematics at our side, there are countless patterns and realities in both human society and its environment that will simply sail over our heads while we're none the wiser. So note that he emphasizes patterns again, and he emphasizes that just observing the patterns doesn't actually help you to make use of them. You have to understand them. And this is where abstraction and mathematics and logic come in. So if you put this together, I've told you that mathematics will enable you to abstract things, to model, analyze, and solve problems, and that this is important, obviously. And what that means is that graduates with skills in this area will be highly sought after by employers. Um, a couple of quotes just to show that this is not just me telling you this. One quote that I found was from the US Department of Labor, which, if you translate it into proper English, reads, today's learner will have had 10 to 14 jobs by the age of 38. Second, research done by Dell and the Institute for the Future. Now, this was done in 2018, so it's fairly recent. It said, again, in 2018, that up to 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. Now, 2030 isn't that far away anymore, right? So if you put these two statements together, so firstly, you will have lots of jobs in your career. And secondly, most of the jobs that you will have haven't even been invented yet. It means that you will need to analyze, model, and understand things that don't even exist yet. So because they don't exist yet, you can't solve this challenge by applying formulas that somebody told you during your study. These formulas don't exist either. What you need instead is the ability to think abstractly and build models describing things that are new, not only new to you, but new to the whole world. So again, a degree in mathematics is exactly about that. It will prepare you for this challenge. A couple of other quotes. These are taken from the Australian Financial Review. One of the editors has said it has been estimated that 75% of the fastest growing occupations require STEM skills and knowledge. And of course, the M here in STEM stands for mathematics. Another quote by the same author, um, business groups consistently identify poor numeracy skills as barriers to employment and productivity growth generally. Also, data show that there have never been more Australians with a high school certificate, university degree, or other educational qualification. However, employers insist that they struggle to fill vacancies with the right candidates. So the bottom line is it's not just about getting a degree. You need to get a degree that actually prepares you for the important things. Um, Another quote from a different source, the Office of the Chief Scientist. Uh, he said that 70% of Australian employers identify STEM employees as being among the most innovative. And last but not least, Ross Gittins from the Sydney Morning Herald, his economics editor there. He says that mathematics is the single most useful ability to have in your kit bag to equip you for any eventuality. So again, this emphasizing that it's allowing you to deal with things that you haven't seen before, that are new. In any case, employers set a lot of store by mathematical ability and are more likely to hire someone with a good background in mathematics. Basically, the bottom line is, if you take all of these quotes together, you will need mathematics skills to win over competitors in the job market. So this was why is knowing mathematics important for you text 1 and 2. There's another one which is perhaps a little bit more surprising to some of you. Even if you don't want to work as a mathematician, you're more likely than not will need some mathematics skills. And I'll give you some quotes of two people that I've actually talked to, which go along the lines of saying that mathematics is necessary for careers that don't sound like it and where people didn't expect it. So first one from the person I call Frank here. He does life sciences and said, biology is no longer about getting a butterfly net and going for a walk in the park. Biologists need quantitative skills. So what you're doing is collecting lots of data and then analyzing them. And this analysis needs mathematics and statistics. This is highly theoretical in parts. I've got a colleague who's a trained algebraist and works in algebraic biology now. So second quote from someone I call Kathy here. She works in marketing. It doesn't sound like mathematics at all, right? What she said is, I applied for a marketing job in a large, well-known company. Several hundred applied for the job. And the first thing that I had to do in the selection process was to sit a mathematics test for marketing. So I said before that you'll need mathematics skills to win over competitors in the job market. But this is true even if you don't want to work as a mathematician, you will still need mathematics skills. Last but not least, take 4. Many university courses have a mathematics component that is compulsory. So even if you study things like science, computing, um, medicine, you will need to do mathematics units or mathematics courses in your degree. So a few examples of subjects from the Sydney region where you have to have some, or you have to pass some mathematics units. And that's the obvious ones. I mean, you shouldn't expect to be able to do economics or finance or business or engineering or mathematics, science, education without actually knowing some mathematics. But so these are the obvious ones, but there are other fields where this is perhaps a little bit less obvious. Management, well, environmental management, veterinary science. Maybe you wouldn't have expected to have to do compulsory mathematics content in a veterinary science course. Pharmacy, and then various fields of science. Now, physics shouldn't be surprising, but there's also biology, chemistry, and animal science, health science, applied science, and sports science in there. So all of these courses will force you to complete some mathematics units in your university studies. So not only will you need mathematics skills to win over competitors in the job market, but you might actually even need mathematics skills to get on the job market in the first place. So I hope that I've convinced you that mathematics is important because it simply is everywhere. Let's go to the second part of the talk, which hopefully will interest some of you, depending on where in your high school career you are. It's about choosing your HSC subjects. Now, basically, my advice is nice and sweet. It's this: take the highest level of mathematics that you can handle. Now, for everybody, that will be a different level. But if you're good at mathematics, if you like mathematics, or if you can cope with mathematics, take the highest level of mathematics that you can do. Now, frequently, I get this reply, but won't choosing a lower level of mathematics, for instance, mathematics standard, increase my ATAR? Well, short answer, possibly, but probably not. Why is that? Basically, reason is that raw HSC marks are scaled before computing the ATAR. And how are they scaled? Well, this diagram here shows you. So on the horizontal axis, you have the HSC mark, which is basically the percentile in which a particular student sits. So um, here we've got 50%, so that's not particularly good. Up here we've got 100% and so on. So this is within the cohort of the mathematics course that they're doing at high school. This is the HSC mark that they're receiving for that course. And on the vertical axis, you see the scaled mark, which actually enters the computation of the ATAR. Now, I got this information um, from the website of the department that actually does the ATAR scaling, right? So this is accurate. Now, what that means is if you drill down the data a bit, to get the same scaled mark, so look at this level, that's a scaled mark of roughly above 40. To get the same scaled mark as a student in the middle of the extension one cohort. So the blue line here corresponds to extension one cohort. So if someone is in the extension one cohort and sits here, they're sitting in the middle of the cohort, their raw HSC mark is 50, and their scaled mark entering the ATAR is a little bit over 40. Now, if a student in the mathematics advanced course wants to get the same scaled mark, that is the same contribution to their ATAR, you need to look at the black curve and you'll find that they need to be in the top 16% of their advanced cohort. And if someone said that, well, choosing mathematics standard would increase my ATAR, let's see how that pans out for them. So to get the same scaled mark of roughly over 40, looking at the mathematics standard 2 curve, they would have to be in the top 2% of the standard 2 cohort. So that sounds like a risky gamble to me. Now, maybe extension one is beyond you. So let's look at another example. Let's think about a student who could do mathematics advanced. The question is, should they? Well, let's do the same analysis. Assume we're looking at a student who just is in the middle of their cohort. So their raw HSC mark in the mathematics advanced is 50. That translates to a scaled mark of roughly 32. If a student in the mathematics standard 2 course, the yellow curve, wants to get the same scaled mark, they would have to be in the top 18% of the standard 2 cohort. And basically forget about standard 1, right? I'm not even sure whether a mark of 99.9 or 99.5 would do this, or whether that's just below the scaled mark of the middle mathematics advanced student. So If someone tells you that choosing a lower level of mathematics will increase your ATAR, show them this picture. It can work, but it's a very, very, very risky gamble. Even if the gamble works, you might lose out. Why is that? Well, because universities give bonus points for the higher level mathematics subjects. So for instance, if you want to go into an engineering course or into a science course and have done mathematics advanced or mathematics extension 1 or extension 2, you get some bonus points on top of your ATAR score. Now, if you decide to choose to do a lower level mathematics subject instead to gamble on a higher ATAR, you will lose those bonus points. So even if your gamble does work out and your ATAR is slightly higher than it would have been if you'd done extension 1, you may still up ending worse because you've lost the bonus points. Finally, getting into uni is great, right? But it's only the first step. What you actually want to do is to get through uni. So let's look at how that pans out. What I've done here is to look at data, specifically failure rates, for compulsory first year mathematics or statistics units, and I've broken that down by the HSC level, by the HSC mathematics level that students have done. So I note that this is not students in mathematics degrees. So these are not students who train to be mathematicians. They are students who are in mathematics units because these mathematics units are compulsory units in other degrees. For instance, veterinary science or engineering or computing. So as I said, I've broken that down by the HSC mathematics level. For students that have done either mathematics extension 1 or extension 2, the numbers don't look too bad. Failure rate was roughly over 10%. Or put that differently, almost 90% of those students passed their compulsory mathematics units. All good. What about mathematics advanced? Well, it turns out that the mathematics advanced maybe doesn't seem to be that terribly advanced at all, because the failure rate here was more than 2.5 times that of extension 1 or 2 students. Almost a quarter of the students who did mathematics advanced failed their first year mathematics or statistics unit at university. So yes, they did get into uni, but they didn't do so well. And once you get down to mathematics standard, the failure rate is a whopping 57.5%. So more than half of the students cannot cope at university. So what this clearly shows is that mathematics standard, not even mathematics standard 2, no mathematics standard course, is an adequate preparation for entering university with in a degree that requires you to do some mathematics, which includes courses like science, computing, engineering, business, and so on. So again, my advice, don't deliberately set yourself up for failure. And the way to avoid doing that is to take the highest level of mathematics that you can handle. Okay, now I hope that there'll be some of you who say, you didn't have to tell me that. I love mathematics. I want to do mathematics. And I actually ran into someone not too long ago who asked me, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I work at university doing mathematics. His eyes glazed over and said, oh, I loved mathematics at high school. I did 4 units of extension 2, but then I didn't realize that there were jobs in mathematics. So I went into biochemistry. So um, let's look at that a little bit more in detail. Are there actually jobs in mathematics as such? You bet. One of the things which leads to a confusion or misunderstanding sometimes is that not all jobs for which a mathematician qualifies explicitly contain the word mathematics in them. So let's look at a few examples. Job titles that you may want to look out for include the following. Now, details depend a little bit on which branch of mathematics, which area you're particularly interested in and have specialized in. So there's statistics, there's the more analysis end, so modeling differential equations, which might get you into financial mathematics. And there's also the more abstract or pure, in inverted commas, end, like algebra, combinatorics, which could lead you into optimization or operations research. So regardless of those fine details, let's look at some job titles. I mean, there's the obvious one, mathematician and statistician. That's not too surprising. But there's also quite a lot of names involving the word analyst. And what that basically means is that your job is to work with data and make sense of them. So again, this is where modeling and abstraction comes in. So these days, you could get a database that contains a whole hard drive, yeah, a terabyte full of data. That's great, but not terribly useful. What you really need to do is to identify patterns in that data to get something useful out of it. And this is the job of, for instance, data scientists or data analysts. And the other analysts do similar things in a particular application. So for instance, the business analyst will look at well, business reports, for instance. Market analysis could be investment banking. Similarly, investment banking. Risk analysts would typically work for an insurance company. The quantitative financial analyst, either investment banking or lending, something like that. Operational research analyst is a little bit more on the let's say theoretical end, possibly. What they could do is to look at planning of uh, business operations, hence the name. So you could look at logistics, uh, transport line, delivery line, planning and optimizing, and so on. They're financial consultants. Then a whole type of jobs that have forecasting or planning in them. So sales or production forecasting officer or production systems planning officer. Now, if you read some of these names, you would not think of mathematics at all, but you would actually be qualified to apply for those. So um, these are just examples. There's many, many more. So if you want to get a good feeling, an excellent source is this here. AMSI is the Australian Mathematical Science Institute. So what they do is, well, one of the many things they do is that they publish every year a careers guide for um, mathematics graduates, which is entitled Maths Ads, as a slight pun. So here's the URL, but you don't need to memorize the URL. If you just Google AMSI Maths Ads, you will find that. You can download it and have a look. So there's plenty of options out there. Um, so I've broken down by the job titles. Now do something similar. Let's look at the fields in which mathematicians actually work. Again, some of them are obvious. So business, for instance, shouldn't be surprising that they employ mathematicians. Um, Consulting might have surprised you if you don't know anybody who's working in consulting. So again, what they do is they look at, for instance, how a business is operating, and then they try to identify the weak points. So again, it's about identifying patterns and doing model building. There's market research. Health administration is something that you may not have thought of, and this is very topical. I mean, at the moment, health administrators, not so much in Australia because we're reasonably lucky, but certainly health administrators in Europe are very busy making mathematical models for modeling their occupancy of the intensive care units in hospitals. So that requires hardcore mathematical modeling, not only of the spread of the infection, but also of the demand that this places on very practical hospital systems. Information security. Just on the weekend, I talked to a colleague. He's a mathematician, and he now runs the security department of Woolworths online shopping. So these are all jobs that mathematicians can get into. Obviously, there's teaching education. At the moment in New South Wales, a lot of mathematics courses at high school are taught by teachers who are not mathematically trained. This has been identified as a problem. I mean, this has hit the news pretty big time in the last 12 months. So that's another career option for mathematics graduates. I'm not going through all of them. There's biostatistics, genetics, insurance is another obvious one. The amount that you have to pay for your CTP insurance, that has to be calculated somehow. It needs to have a model built in that estimates how likely you are to cause a crash, for instance. We've talked about those already. Oh, here's another interesting one, meteorology. That is really hardcore partial differential equations, for instance. So this is hardcore applied mathematics, really. Criminology, it's again something that perhaps surprises you. Forensics, computing hopefully isn't surprising. I mean, computing is about working with numbers, right? So understanding them is a good idea. Game design these days takes in a lot of mathematics graduates, and data science. Um, so don't look at this too much in detail. The only thing that I want to get out of here is that it's really a very broad range of industrial sectors that employ mathematicians. So the top one is education. The next one is scientific and technical services. The next one is financial and insurance services. Those are the sort of obvious ones, but they together only account for a little bit more than half of the mathematics graduates. The rest of the mathematics graduates are working in areas that don't necessarily have mathematics in their names. Another question. I mean, getting a job is great and it's important, but getting a job that you're happy with is even better. So is there job satisfaction in mathematics as such? Well, of course, you see me smiling. I'm working as a mathematician at university and I just love it. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at this. There was a survey done by a career market platform, careercast.com. You can look at that. They do that every year. I don't actually think they did it in 2020 because of COVID. So the most recent data that I've got is 2019. So they're doing a top 10 list of jobs. And the criteria that they're using are firstly income, that is the estimated mid-level income and also the income growth during your career. The outlook for employment, that is the employment growth, and the other side of the medal is the risk of unemployment, which hopefully is low. There's the work environment, both physical and emotional. There's certain stress factors, for instance, travel requirements, having to work to fixed and unreasonable deadlines, physical demand, and lots of them. I didn't list all 11. You can check the website. So let's look at what they came up with. So I'm not listing all the top 10 jobs, but the first one here was data scientist. Second one was statistician. Then there was a bit of a gap. The seventh was information security analyst. 8 is mathematician. 9 is operations research analyst. So all of these 5 have something to do with mathematics. Well, I would classify at least 4.5 as mathematics, directly mathematics related. I didn't color information security analyst red as well because that requires a little bit in addition to mathematics. So there you need a computing background as well. But I think 4.5 jobs or 4.5 fields in the top 10 job lists is not too bad for a discipline like mathematics. So think about that. So finally, a little bit of commercial. If you want to study mathematics, you now have an option of doing that at Western Sydney. In 2022, we will have a dedicated Bachelor of Mathematics course starting at Western Sydney for which I'm the responsible person. So if you've got any questions on that, please feel free to drop me an email. My email address is going to be on the next slide. So the key features of this new course are that it's got a very, very strong core content in mathematics statistics, which will give you a broad base of knowledge in the field. And you can use that broad base to build your specialization in many areas. To do this, you can use your free electives, which you have in that course. You've got 8 electives which you can choose from. You can choose a lot of majors, but there's 4 majors that we particularly recommend. They're testimonial majors, which means that if you complete them, they will actually appear written on your testimonial. So one of them is data science. Data science is a demand area of employment. And if you remember, it was the thing here topping the top 10 job list. So that's something to look at. The second one is financial mathematics. That's again a demand area of employment, and in particular in Western Sydney. The Parramatta region has become a hub for many insurance and finance companies. And so if you're local to Western Sydney and want to get a job in finance or the financial industry, including insurance, for instance, then going for a specialization in financial mathematics is a really good idea. I should say that a couple of years ago, we had one of our professors poached by an insurance company because they were just, I mean, he was really good. He was also very nice, but they were desperate to get people. I mentioned that already. There's secondary teaching. It's a demand area of employment. And in fact, if you're looking at the Department of Education, then Western Sydney is singled out as a particular important area where there's a huge shortage of trained mathematics teachers. So that's something that will almost guarantee that you're not looking for a job too long. Finally, there's a major which we'll call computational mathematics. If you like mathematics so much that you would like to continue to a PhD, that's a doctorate, then this is a pathway for it. We've got at Western Sydney the Centre for Research in Mathematics and Data Science. It's a collection of very strong researchers, nationally and internationally strong. And so if you want to do a PhD with them, then taking the computational mathematics major would be a really good idea. You can also use your 8 free electives that you have in this course for to do another major if you want, but these are the options that are particularly math related. So any questions on this, if you have, you can ask right here, or as I said, by email. Sarah's also typed that into the chat. You can also find me in the staff directory of the university. I'm more than welcome to answer any questions for you. And basically, this is sort of the end of my little chat. I just want to show you the core units. That probably these names don't tell you too much, but I thought it couldn't hurt to show them to you for a second. So if you know what these things mean, you will see that the core of this course will give you a reasonably strong background. Okay, I've been talking for long enough. Now I will hand over to a colleague of mine, Dr. Leanne Rylands, who's also a researcher in the Center for Research in Mathematics and Data Science at our institute. And she will tell you a little bit about, well, some personal stories about mathematics. So Leanne, please go for it. I stopped my screen share to let you go.
Hello, thank you, Volker. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of my friends and what they're doing. A couple of days I've sat down and thought, who do I know who's doing maths and what are they doing? And I've got some friends who are doing some amazing things. I'm doing maths because I love it and because I find it fun. And my friends, they all seem happy with their job. The other thing that's common about my friends is they've got really interesting jobs and they're well paid. And those, they're all good things. Firstly, there's Olivia. Olivia works, she's an expert in operations research. She works a lot on rostering. She does rostering for a variety of industries. Her job includes designing algorithms, wrangling data, talking to clients. Recently, she built code that designed a roster for cleaning and catering for a hospital and saved them $200,000 annually, which is amazing. And then she was telling me about a friend of hers, Rosalind, who works at CSIRO in a university, whose main interest is quite current, modeling infectious diseases. And prior to COVID-19, she worked on modeling Ebola, TB, and various other diseases. And apparently her work, which showed that even if Ebola made it to Australia, it would be relatively easily contained, enabled resources to be shifted to more important things, which has probably prevented deaths, saved lives here in Australia. There's Melanie, who has a particular interest in modelling the flow of liquids. She's been working on soil erosion in Queensland farms and the impact that has on the Great Barrier Reef. There's Adele, who is the thing that impresses me about Adele. She's moved right up the chain. She's a seriously high-powered executive who doesn't talk about millions of dollars. She talks about capital raisings and mergers about billions of dollars. So, and she particularly works with complex finance structures. I find that very impressive. On a totally different tack, there's Jennifer, who has worked on cryptology and security. She's been a trailblazer in Australia in security and cryptology. She's won many awards and done a whole lot of interesting things. In particular, a particular interest of hers is something called Hadamard matrices, which had special uses in the NASA space program to bring pictures back to Earth from space probes. There's Karen, who's working in a geoscience company. She's moved up the chain and is a manager of something. I think she's worked in Brisbane and Perth. There's Andrea, who used to work at Boral, but is now a very, very senior, I think an executive general manager in CSR. And then there's a couple of people who are working as mathematicians in Australia. Cheryl Prager, who some decades ago was spoken of as, at the time, being possibly Australia's best mathematician. And there's Nalini Joshi, who some of you might have seen on television or heard on the radio. She makes quite a few appearances these days. She's a seriously good mathematician working in Sydney. There's Mary, who I know of her because of her work on bees, but she's also interested in mathematical models for arteriosclerosis and carcinogenesis. And then just last week, I was at a dinner party and I ran into someone I hadn't met before, and I said, I'm doing maths. And she said, oh, I love maths. I'm in insurance. And she's got an interesting and good job in insurance. There's all sorts of other things. There's Sarah working with data, Sophie working in finance, Katrina, who used to work in banking, Julia, who works promoting mathematics. There's Lucy, who's very high up in banking in Australia. But then there's also maths teachers. Let's not forget maths teachers, who are so important. And also, the other thing about maths teachers, there are so many jobs for maths teachers. And as Volker said, there is a huge need for maths teachers, but there's a huge need for people with mathematics skills in every industry. And Volker mentioned consulting. I've also got some friends working in consulting who are doing extremely well. I mean, some of these jobs pay a lot of money, but they're also very, very interesting. Okay, that's a short summary from me on what my friends are doing. Thank you.